August 3rd, 2016. Why is that day important?
Well, I've been having noticed some things in my chest and some things when I work out. I'm a big fitness guy, so working out like 2 a days and going with my son and, get lightheaded, wasn't recovering real quick. Things that would normally take me a certain amount of time, I was struggling to get in those times, and heart was jumping in my chest a little bit. A little family history, so I had went to the doctor and gotten the results back, for a calcium score. I think high risk for heart attack is 200 or above, and mine was like 635. So I knew something was there, but went to the doctor that morning, 7 o'clock, waiting on the front step to get in and figure out what was going on. And what I didn't think was that the news that I would get by 5 o'clock that afternoon after a battery of tests and all kind of crazy stuff was that, hey man, we're going to have to do a double bypass. You're gonna die within the next 30 seconds or the next 30 days if you have this heart attack for where the blockage is. So we're going to put you in. We're going to do surgery first thing in the morning. And
wow.
It's life-changing. Makes you think about things.
Join Charlie Maloof as he explores the personal journeys of Broad River Retail's very own memory makers. Welcome to Stories from the River.
Welcome to Stories from the River with our head coach, our Senior Vice President of Retail Performance, Stacey McCormick. Welcome to the pod, Stace.
Glad to be here, Charlie.
I can't wait.
I've been excited about it, so good deal.
Yeah, it's going to be really cool to hear your story. You've got an illustrious career in home furnishings that's what, 3 or 4 decades now?
35 years.
35 years. Yeah. Okay, well, tell us a little bit about you and your background prior to coming to the river.
Okay, well, I talk to our VIAs all the time, and in the stores, I like to connect with people, and I want to make sure that, I see everybody I can. And one of the things they get shocked by is when I tell them that I started in this business doing exactly what you do. So I started with Kane Furniture back in 1987 as they called us a warehouseman, but a store warehouse person who I opened the furniture up, put it on the floor, and, I needed a job. I put on my only suit that I had for weddings and graduations and went and applied for a warehouse job. Mm-hmm. And finally, a guy named Ron McNichol took a chance and hired me. And he was very instrumental in my career in the retail furniture industry. And he hired me, and I fell in love with the business. And then from there, I think I've done every job that you could possibly do, either because I wanted to, needed to, or had to. So. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you've owned your own stores before, right?
Yeah. So I went to work with Cane's. I worked with them in both in Orlando as a warehouse guy, and then I got into sales. And I went into sales, and I was scared. I was young, didn't know if I could do it. Ron said, "Stacey, you can do this," and I'm like, oh gosh. I made more money than I ever made in my life. I made more money than my wife and I had made together the previous year. And I said, I kind of like this. And then I enjoyed the furniture. I just enjoyed the business. And I grew up playing competitive sports. It kind of filled the competitive side. Mm-hmm. I love math, the numbers, all that good stuff. And so from there, I went to work with Rhodes Furniture. And it just really, that's where leadership started to kick in. I ran into some great folks there. Rhodes was a phenomenal company during that time, and I'm sure we'll talk about the impact of certain people. But when you look around the retail furniture industry and just the furniture industry at large today, there's many people in executive positions that worked at Rhodes Furniture, right? So got into leadership, moved up with the company, became one of the youngest people that ever put on the training program, for management, one of the youngest people to ever get promoted to a multi-unit, role. And then we ended up out in Kansas City. Didn't like it out there. Came back. I went to work for an independent in Tupelo, Mississippi, and I was in Tupelo for 20 years. And John Crawford, great guy, one of my mentors and people who taught me a lot about life and business, and really saw some things in me that maybe at that point still I didn't see in myself, right? And he gave me a chance, and then ultimately through some circumstances, he needed to sell his business, and he kind of put me in business. And I did own my own stores. I ended up owning a Bassett store, an independent store, and 3 mattress stores.
Wow.
So, bought them in March of 2007. You know what happened right after that. I was also heavily leveraged, so just didn't work out. Okay. My American dream became my American nightmare right there. But, hey, look, all roads lead you to where you are today, and I'm super happy to be where I am.
And then Jim Spencer came calling.
Yep. Well, I actually called Jim.
You called Jim?
I called Jim. I went to work with John. He and I developed after the business failed. I went back to work with him. We had kind of developed a closeout company where we would, go out and do cash raising sales, and it was really tough. Didn't like being away from home that much. Also, that's a tough business to be in, and I don't know that I really liked the way that I had to do my job, and so I reached out to Jim and said, "Hey, Jim, I think I could do you guys some good, and I need you guys right now." And he said, "Yeah, come on." And I went to work with DSG, and I worked for Jim and Chad for 5 years.
And that's another licensee, great friends of ours, great operator.
Yeah.
You were there for 5 years, then you went to another licensee, a smaller licensee in Arkansas, I believe.
Yeah, Chris Gamble. Chris is a great friend. I reached out. I needed to make a change. I was running Stash for DSG and Stash is a multi-unit brand, and it was great. I loved it. It was awesome. We had it rolling in the right direction, but I just felt the pull. My wife wanted to move. At that point, closer to home. I reached out to Chris. We talked about some things, put a deal together, went to work for him. Circumstances just kind of didn't work out to where those things were going to happen, and I needed to get somewhere. My wife and I had lived apart for a year, so we needed to figure something out. So I'd seen things through, LinkedIn, and I knew Leslie Voorhees and Stacey Coker and Chris Wright, and we got together, and here I am.
So then the river came calling.
That's it.
And you had heard some things, and you were referred to us. We had an opening for our head coach position. We needed someone great, and then you kind of landed in our lap. Now, before your first day, you came, while we were in the interview process, you came to visit us. I think we were doing our annual kickoff for 2020. Yeah. So it was late January, and it was our retail excellence meeting, our RX meeting. You had what we used to call then a day zero backstage VIP pass, and spent the day with us, and maybe went to dinner with us that night. What do you remember about that day, that experience?
The first thing I remember is pulling into the parking lot, and there was a parking spot there was a name placard on a cone, and there was a parking spot right in the front. And I thought, man, that's pretty special. That's pretty intentional
for you.
Yeah, with my name on it. Yeah.
VIP.
Yeah,
front
absolutely,
row.
Absolutely. And so the other thing I remember about that is just as I sat back and watched and listened, is that the people were happy. They were engaged. They were. There wasn't, you usually see side conversations and hear, you start to hear the skinny and how, well, that's a bunch of, I can't believe they're wanting us to do that. You can catch those conversations off to the side when people are huddled up, and I never heard any of that, right? People were genuinely looked like they liked each other. They were nice to each other, and there didn't seem to be any politics inside of the room, and I just felt like the energy of what was happening was really positive, and it was intriguing. Yeah,
and we had just come off a really great year, our year of purpose in 2019, and we had some big growth plans, and we were ready. We just needed someone to help us kind of take it to the next level, and it was a big opportunity, a big role, and so we finally came to a mutual agreement, and you moved to Charlotte and assumed the role February 25th, 2020. So at that time, and it was our next RX meeting. So that was your first day.
Yeah.
So do you remember? So obviously, I think you do remember your first day. It's probably a pretty energetic day.
Yeah.
And there's nothing to hide at these RX meetings. Like, hey, if people are happy, they're happy. If they're not,
exactly.
You get to see it all. If we show you something that's not true and tell you something that's not try to hide something,
Yeah.
you'll be disappointed. So we want
Yeah.
to be as authentic through and through. But I'm glad you had that experience. So what do you remember like about that first day, February 25th, 2020? I'm sure you're bubbling up with excitement and ready to
I was really excited, and I was met in the lobby with a day one box, so that was really cool, and taken up to where my office was going to be, and there was some gifts and things of that nature, and a welcome sign and all these type things, and it was again really intentional, and it was really important that and I realized I'd already known this, but obviously it started to sink in that we're different here at Broad River because we want to intentionally make sure that people know how much we genuinely appreciate their presence in our company, right?
Yeah.
So ultimately, the day, a little nervous. I don't get nervous easy, but I was a little nervous, and I got up, and I know that y'all had said, hey, you got 5 minutes to introduce yourself, and I knew that I wasn't going to be 5 minutes. I think I even told you that. I can't do this in 5 minutes, and it took me 20, so that's all right. We made it through the day, but I just remember how kind everybody was, and how nice and genuine everybody was, and how welcoming everybody was to me, and how I felt like people wanted wanted me there, and is appreciated. So I really felt like it was a great day.
Yeah, it was a great day, and we didn't know what would change, but then we thought it would be a nice, soft, easy landing, a great onboarding experience. Take your time, nothing's broken, we're good, everything's going great. And then the week of March 11th, March 12th, March 13th. Now let's just go back a minute. So those were pretty memorable days. I think on the night of March 11th, President Trump declared, or the WHO declared, World Health Organization, COVID a global pandemic. But the next morning, we had a ribbon cutting in Raleigh, North Carolina for our new outlet. We couldn't undo that. So you got a global pandemic, the NBA shutting down their season, but we still have to go cut a ribbon. And that was kind of weird and awkward. And we had the meeting, or maybe our last time to gather as a team dinner for 2 years, because we had the Tex-Mex dinner with our partners and friends at Temper Sealy and some of our leaders afterwards. I just remember that was kind of an ominous, eerie feeling. We didn't know that was going to be the last time. We just didn't know what to expect. And then the next day, Friday the 13th of March, we kind of went into 24/7 crisis management, town hall every day, communication. So what do you remember about that week in particular?
Well, obviously you're I'm in a new role. I'm here for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and I'm going over to meet I knew I would meet a bunch of people that I hadn't been able to meet yet, so that's always good. And I'm trying to that's really what I'm trying to do that first 90 days, is just connect, just to go see everyone, put a face with a name, and introduce myself and see what I could do to help them. And so I'm excited. We're going over. We're cutting a ribbon. Store number 22, and our third outlet. Sorry, and super excited. And then I know there's this ominous thing back here in the back of our head that okay, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? And we had already known that it was not good. It was bad, and so really, what I remember the most was waking up on the morning of the 13th, and I think it was sometime that morning that I started getting calls from you and Manny, and hey, Stacey, they're shutting down the country. We don't know what this means to us. We don't know how this is going to go, but they're shutting down the country. So stay tuned. We'll be back in touch, right? And I'm like, okay, all right, we'll see. We'll figure this out. And then it became, calls at 11 o'clock, midnight at night, starting the morning at 8:30, 7:30, 8 o'clock with a call, making sure that we were all on the same page, getting ideas, understanding what stores we were having challenges with, who's going to go on a furlough, all those type things, which I'm sure we'll kind of talk about.
So much for a nice and easy soft on.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Kind of thrown to the fire.
Yeah.
So the pandemic began in earnest in April. I think I was fighting with landlords. I think you and Manny were fighting to keep stores open and staffed. And so talk to us about your experience with our memory makers, particularly during April and May 2020.
I think that look, I want to start by saying this. This pandemic was unprecedented, and there's millions of people who lost their lives and millions of families that were impacted. And so I wouldn't say that the pandemic was good. So I want to clarify that to start with, right? Yeah. But what I would say is this, from a career standpoint, knowing that that's going on and there's nothing that I can do to control it, it was actually probably really good for me in my role, because people got to see me under fire, and they got to see my heart, and they got to see who I really was under the layers of that. I really did truly care about them, that I really did truly, want what was best for them, because we had people who were scared to come to work. They didn't want to, and they had really true, fear. They didn't know what was going on.
And we said that was okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. And then we had people who had people at home who their health was compromised. And then we had people who were scared to not work because they needed that for their mental health. They couldn't see, what am I going to do if I don't have any money?
That's right.
So we had all sides of it. And there was a lot of really, I would say, pressure that we felt to do right by every single one of them.
Yeah.
And I give you and Manny full credit, and our leadership team, and then our memory makers, because that's what we did. So, what our memory makers, how they responded is we had some that just truly just stepped up, right?
Big time.
And Janet's going and helping us open a store on a Saturday because we don't have enough people to run it. And she's she's our associate director of visual impact, but she wasn't the only one. There were others, Heather, all of these other people, Tracy,
Courtney and Scott Patrick.
Patrick, absolutely. And then you think Antoine, Blackwell, Kay Edwards, Dwayne Baker, Ricky Williams, Rod. They would go anywhere we asked them to go. They went to Columbia, they went to Greenville, they went to Matthews, they went to the mountains. I mean, anytime we said, hey, we need you here, they went. Yeah. Mason Rudolph and Rob Patrick ran the Spartanburg store, just the two of them. We opened it 5 days a week so they could have 2 days off, and it's just the two of them ran it for those 2 months. So you just saw people, stepping up. They wanted to help the company. They wanted to help, the company survive. Yeah. But the other thing is I think the ones that didn't, who felt unsafe, didn't feel like we looked on them the wrong way.
Yeah, and I think, to your point, the personalization to whatever your personal experience was something unprecedented. Let's figure out how to solve for that.
That's right. We're not mad at you if you don't want to work.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, we love you and we're okay with it.
Well, matter of fact, we sent the Memory Maker Assistance Fund checks.
Absolutely. Yeah. Before the government check got there, the Broad River check made it.
We knew there was going to be some economic pain, and we did what we could to help them out. But because we felt that for them, and some of us had to. I mean, you're not even a month on the job, and we're all going to have to make sacrifices. That's going to hurt all of our incomes.
Oh yeah, we took salary cuts. So,
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. How did it change at retail once the first stimulus checks hit in mid-April?
Well, we didn't have enough people in the stores at that time. Why
is that? Because people started coming again.
Yeah. I mean, we did get people who all of a sudden started hearing how good it was, and they wanted to come back to work, right? But ultimately, we had gotten down to, I think at the low point, we had 13 stores open. Most of the time, we had 16 or 17 open.
Out of 22?
Out of 22 at the time. And what we started to see was just, the money was there, so the traffic was there, and so all these folks who had said, hey, look, I want to be out for till the end of May, started saying, hey, can I come back? Which we're open arms, yes, please come back. And eventually we were able to get most of our stores reopened. Some of them because of some local governments, we weren't able to do that, and some restrictions. But I also would tell you, I remember like Tracy. And the HC team just doing everything they could to make sure that our memory makers were taken care of, and that they were nurtured and they felt good. Bill Woodman and Steve Carey and that whole financial team running like every financial scenario that you could think to run. I mean, we were thin and we were working so hard, but everybody was just pitching in, wanting it to work for all of us and for the greater good of the company, so we could bring everybody back whole, right?
Yeah, bring all of our memory, because our word of the year was united.
That's it.
And our calling card became, we want to bring all of our memory makers home.
That's it.
And so, and I don't want to be redundant in asking how we handled the pandemic. So, because I was going to ask you that, and I think you answered it, but what else do you think we got right?
Look, I think that what we got right was a lot of things. Number one, I think the Memory Maker Assistance Fund. I think, we've had people tell us the stories of, hey, I was on furlough. I wasn't even planning on coming back. And all of a sudden I go to my mailbox one day and there's a $500 check in there. And then I knew I was at the right place, and I knew that these guys really did care about me, right? But what we got right, the town halls, the transparency. I can remember you being asked questions on those town halls that you really didn't have an answer for, because we didn't have all the information. We couldn't answer it. And you basically, what CEO looks back through that camera at that memory maker that's asking that question and say, hey, what do you think we should do? How do you think we should handle it? Like, I'm open to any ideas, because we want to just do the right thing, right? So I think the town halls and the transparency, I think the Memory Maker Assistance Fund, I think the way that we made the people who were taking furloughs feel like, look, we're not, you do what you got to do. Because I would get calls, Stacey, I don't want to let the company down, but I really don't feel safe. And I'm like, look, you do what you feel like you need to do. You're not going to get any pressure from us. And hey, by the way, when all this gets to the end, you're going to have your job. Just come back. Just come back and everything will be fine. And if you need to stay in contact with us, we're going to have these town halls, so we'll be able to communicate with you. But I think a lot of it was that. And then I think that we stayed positive during that time. That's where Project Premier became, at the end of April or 1st of May. I was feeling like these folks that were working were feeling they were maxed out. They were, even though they were doing well, they were at their mental and physical mask, all those things. And
it was heavy. Heavy.
So I reached out to Heather and said, hey, Heather, I know that you're the queen of Broad River when it comes to loving on our people. Like, I've got this idea. And then she grabbed it and her team, and they ran with it. And we just started, the whole thing about Project Premier is catching people doing things right and celebrating that.
I think that's the McCormickism, our first one.
That's it.
That's the first one. Okay, got it. So, and it was challenging to keep stores open. Government's trying to shut us down at times and not have enough staff at times, or just being flexible. Okay, well, we'll open 5 days a week, or we'll have to, just so many things we have to do. Well, we can't open today. Or we'll move a team from Pineville to Kannapolis to go open that store today.
Absolutely. And I didn't even bring that up. Like Kim Trulio, Kathy Ailman, Kevin Kuhlman, Chantel Hazel, they all went up there to Kannapolis because Pineville got closed. And the Kannapolis team wanted to be on furlough. So we did what we needed to do, and we had memory makers that just stepped up and just showed the human spirit.
And the Ben Gambles of the world running like by appointment only and carry.
Exactly. Exactly.
So it was interesting, but kind of what changed, what we didn't expect, who could have expected, when the first stimulus came, demand for our industry shot up starting April 15th. And then it was just like the floodgates were open. And so we couldn't have enough salespeople or HFCs as we call them. And then after a period of time, we didn't have enough product. Yeah. That's what started the backlog, and all the durable goods, they weren't producing goods, but they sure did produce a lot of demand. So it was certainly interesting times. We did the best that we could. And did our memory makers' resiliency and bravery surprise you during that time?
It kind of did. I think that there was so much, about what I said I saw when I first came in that first day, and what I experienced when I went out to the stores, that I believe that there was such a trust capital that had been built.
That's right.
And a trust bond that had been built where, these people, all of these people's names, you and Manny both. Like when you go into a store, you know who they are, you know their name, and you were connected with them. And they had fought these fights with you guys. And ultimately, I think they wanted the company to survive because they wanted to have a great company to come back to to be working for. Yeah. So, it was surprising and not surprising because I'm I believe in the human spirit. I think that people want to do great and they want to be part of something great and they want to do right by people. I think we learn to not do that, right? But it was surprising in the fact that there was very little animosity that came out of that. And then I've heard other companies that we, share, information with that didn't experience quite the same way.
Yeah, when we were talking about in late March, like, what do we expect? We're going to have to offer something to our folks, and we don't know, but we kind of thought 30% of our staff would take a furlough, and that's almost to a T exactly what it was. Yeah. They took the furlough, and so we said, okay, well, with the other 70%, we can expect lower traffic, and we're just going to have to make do with what we have because we're going to have to be empathetic to what people are going through, and if we lose money, we lose money. We're just going to stretch our runway as long as we can. What turned out, though, we just needed a lot more people, but then we just had to make do. So it was interesting. So reflecting back on the first few months of the pandemic, since this is Stories from the River, and we are all about life's best memories, what are some of your favorite memories during that time?
I would tell you, I think some of the favorite memories were having people, say thank you. Having memory makers that would really, even though we were doing everything we could and they were doing so much for us, they would say thank you to us. They would say, hey, we appreciate the fact that you guys are fighting so hard to keep the stores open so that we've got something to do. Or then the people on furlough saying, thank you. I appreciate the fact that I got this check or whatever it was. Or, hey, I appreciate you guys checking in on us because like I was calling a bunch of people during that saying, hey, how are you doing? I hadn't heard from you. Just wanted to check in and see how you're making it. Is everything going well? Is all your family safe? All of those things. So I think that, for me, that would be the wins and some of the success stories. The other success stories was, we had our traffic was down 65% from what it was the previous year, but our business was only down 30. And we were winning in the face of, as a matter of fact, I think, Todd Wannett calls us the shining stars of the retail furniture industry at that time, right?
That is true. Early May 2020, he said we were, and that was a completely team just because we were having those daily 8 a.m. calls with the Big 10, the top 10 licensees and corporate, and providing our updates. And I think the way we had managed kind of, you and Manny, to keep our stores open and keep it staffed while being sensitive to our people, and we were able to receive the pay. And we were, in friendly states, I guess, at that time, because it could have been different. That could have been different in other states and other opportunities. So, but I think we optimized our opportunities.
We did, and I think the other thing is that we were able to keep the focus on doing the right things right and doing the job the way we needed to do it. Because the guests coming in deserve that, and they had a need, so they wouldn't have came unless they did. So ultimately, it was really I went into the mode of let's make sure we don't come out of the pandemic and we've just got all these terrible habits and we've not established anything or we hadn't accomplished anything, and here we are and people are coming back in and we're not a great company for them to work with, or we're not on top of our game.
Yeah, remember we even had May is typically a Moneyball month for us, a 5-week month, but because our sight line, we couldn't see beyond a week or a day or 2 weeks, so we broke it up into Mini May and Mega May.
That's it. So, I remember.
And so I remember. We're going to just look at the first 2 weeks at a time, and then that's different. So then maybe we'll have another kind of checkpoint for do you want to come back, and we'll have another. But you talked about trust capital and the goodwill that had been built up. What we used to say when times were good, when we were winning in 17 and 18 and 19, hey, look, we're going to be transparent with you and be open and honest with you guys. And at one point, we may need to lean on you and when times aren't good. We've been through tough times before, and there'll be tough times again. These things kind of ebb and flow. And I think I would have surprised too by how much our folks really cared and wanted to fight. And by the way, you gave a shout out to the human capital team, Heather and Tracy and everyone who was just calling and checking in, Chelsea, on our folks. I mean, they did a tremendous job.
Absolutely.
Not just the folks who were our memory makers who are still working with us, but those who did take furlough and just checking in with everyone. How are you doing? Yeah. This is tough for everyone.
Absolutely.
We get it. What's your experience like? So I think there's something for companies like that trust capital and goodwill that you build through the way you operate. You're going to need to use that at some point. And so it's not It's because we're all in it together, and everybody
That's it.
matters, and all these
That's
things
it.
can be authentic, and it can be a better approach to business. Okay, so I think we covered some of the good stuff of the pandemic, but then there were some supply chain woes.
Yeah.
I see that big
Yeah,
exhale.
man.
Okay, so in the back half of 2020, let me set the stage for a second. And I know you know this, but for our audience, we realized that the surge of demand for home furnishings wasn't going to go away anytime soon, but the supply chain had stopped producing goods for a period of time, and it was tough to get it ramped back up, and then tough to catch up. It was impossible to catch up. Yeah, I think Ashley handled it as well as and better than anyone else, but that was still not a winning scenario because of what was happening. And so after burning through all of our inventory, and we were fortunate that we had delayed the pain for about 2 months because we opened up Four Oaks and we loaded up both of our distribution centers for the first 2 months of the pandemic. But by July of 2020, we had depleted. Yeah, we didn't have any goods left. And we began taking on water, meaning our backlog began growing at the rate of $1 million a week. And even though we had these great sales, our net cancellations, which had tripled to $500,000 a week, we're like, what is going on? And we couldn't tell them. We could tell them, we don't know when your furniture's coming in. We don't have great visibility. We don't have great information. So how challenging was this for our commission-based and bonus-based HFCs and retail memory makers and leaders?
It was super tough, and the reason it was tough is because they were having the success over here, and they knew that they were writing a lot of business, but they just couldn't tell people when they were going to get their stuff, and we couldn't either. It was a moving target because we get these estimated dates, but one thing we found out really quick was those estimated dates were probably going to change multiple times.
They were not reliable.
And they weren't reliable. And by the way, our whole system had been predicated on these dates, and so we had to break a habit that was just ingrained in everyone. And the other thing is they couldn't grasp that because ultimately, wouldn't you think that the guest just wants to have a date, right?
It's like live change management during a crisis.
Absolutely.
Which we did all the time,
Yeah.
from online chats to e-team to change the way we give dates or backlog dates. Just we're figuring it out.
We changed so much, and that really when we started to not feel that pain from the backlog was when. Well, there were three things I think that happened. Number one, we changed the messaging at the front, and we quit giving dates outside of 3 weeks. Yeah. We, now we're at 4, but then we were at 3, and we quit giving dates outside of 3 weeks, and we just said, hey, you're going to have to wait up to 6 months. And the other thing that started to change though was that the customer sentiment started to change too because they were getting this everywhere. So when they walked in, they just weren't shocked or surprised. So they were willing to work to an extent. And then the last thing is shout out to Brian Deckelnick and our supply chain team and to Harold and all of our Tim and all our BI team going and creating the ship utility. The ship utility was amazing because all of a sudden we went from not being able to deliver enough furniture to being able to deliver more than enough furniture to keep everybody happy and at least start to maintain against the backlog and not have it just swell at $1 million a week. But there was one other thing I wanted to talk about in there. I think the other thing that we did as an organization was I think that we went back and repaid some of that goodwill, because we came out when our deliveries went down to 40 and 50%, or maybe 50, 55% of what the normal was. And we said, wait a minute, this could be something that we're going to face for a while. And we went and gave, loans against open orders to our memory makers. Interest-free, allowed them to pay it back over a long period of time. And, I think more than likely, you can correct me, but we were up around $500,000 in loans to our memory makers, and no other company did that. Nobody I talked to. And I had a bunch of people come to me and say, who does that?
Well, you said, hey, they're winning over here, but they're not getting it over here. And what I was thinking, they're not getting it in their pocketbook.
Right.
It's not translating.
Exactly.
And so, can we pay your benefits? Well, let's take on some of the benefits. paying. What else can we do? Because we had these customer deposits, so we had an influx of cash. We didn't get government support, by the way. We didn't qualify. We had over 500 employees, which we had to tell every landlord that we didn't qualify when we were trying to get some relief there. But then we had this cash from the sales that we were holding on to, or their deposits, but they weren't getting paid on it. So we had to figure out, well, what can we do within the confines of all of our systems? And so top-off loans and things of that nature to help give them the level of income that they needed to kind of survive and keep it going and get credit for the sales that we were writing and pay it back when the supply chain's healed. And don't worry about the interest. It'll just come out of once it's started flow, and some of it's still being paid back.
Right. Well, one other thing I want to make sure that I do talk about there, because you asked me about the pain. And what I would say is that, I have to acknowledge that our memory makers had to go through a really, really tough time because they were afraid of the phone. 20% of the people that were walking in the door were mad, upset, frustrated because they couldn't get their stuff, and they were looking to them for an answer, and they just couldn't produce an answer that was we the system that we were having before we changed it was really making a liar out of all of us, and ultimately not only is it tough on our HFCs and that population because they're the ones that they felt like they were being set up to fail in those scenarios, but it was really tough on our retail leaders, our GM population. We have a wonderful group of people and have had. We've been very fortunate. We've got super leaders, but they had to manage that while also getting those same, they only got the worst of the worst. So usually when it got to them, they were really mad and they were really turned up on 10, and they handled it with grace. They led, they did everything they could to keep a positive mindset with the team. And so, I'm super thankful, and I want to acknowledge everything that both of those groups of people in our organization, retail work, REMs as well, just really stepped up. I can't imagine the days that they had where they just felt like everything was sour, everything was bad.
It was the last 6 months of 2020 were really, really challenging for a lot of people because of what we were going through. And I know it was tough on our partners too, because they couldn't keep up with demand as well. It reminded me of the first 6 months of 2015, which we've talked about on this podcast before, and the challenges that we went through and our people just stepping up. And so in many ways it was comparable. Did we do enough to support our people?
I think we did. I believe we did. I think that, number one, we were very sensitive to it. We, again, continued the town halls. We were very transparent about what we were doing. We were working our tails off behind the scenes. Like I said, Brian, his team, Harold and Tim and the BI team and HC and all of us trying to do everything we could to make sure that our memory makers were as comfortable as possible, and that they felt like we were sensitive to what was going on because it was real, and that we were trying to balance out, hey, what is the best thing for the business, but we also were really leading with that was what's the best thing for our memory makers? What's going to be the best thing for them that we can stomach as a business until this gets through?
How tough was it for you to motivate a retail organization during the middle of this in 2020?
It didn't seem that hard, except when deliveries would get tight. Like when deliveries were super tight, it would be a lot tougher because they saw it and they knew they would get it eventually, but it just wasn't coming through right now, and they weren't making money. And when people aren't making money and they're doing their job at a high level, right? Then how do you answer that? So I think it was hard in a way. But I think what we leaned into is what I always lean into, and I think I know you always lean into, and that is what do we got going on that's good? Let's go out here, Project Premier. Let's go out here and let's find a way to celebrate our people as much as we can because they deserve it. Let's go out here and lean into having empathy, doing something real. But at the same time, we have to go out here and say, hey, by the way, guys, we still have people coming in here. These guests want to buy from us. They deserve the best service. Let's go do that, and it'll all catch up. We'll all pay for itself somewhere down the road.
Well, one of the biggest gut punches in a commission job or a bonusable job at retail is the cancellation.
Oh, absolutely.
You fight so hard for it. And it just became a mindset. You know you're going to have some cancellations today, and you just have to outsell it. It really challenged us to get more resilient with our mindset. And we still saw people win, Jamar, Chantel, with huge success in spite of the pandemic. Okay, so 2020 shining stars. Who really stood out to you other than some of the folks you've already mentioned from the retail team as our shining stars of 2020 during the pandemic?
Look, I've been sitting here this long, and I haven't said a word about our multi-unit leaders. And we talk about pandemic response and really stepping up. But Renee Bradley, Kevin Kinman, Scott Patrick, Leslie Milligan, I went to all of them, and I'm like, you guys, do y'all want to take furlough? They're like, there's no way in the world we're going to do that to Charlie and Manny and to the company, and there's no way we're going to do that to our team. We're going to go lead from the front, and they stepped up. And then our retail leaders. But let me tell you, Tracy Downs, you mentioned Chelsea, you mentioned that team, that just unbelievable response. When I look at I talked about Antoine and Kay and those guys, but Bryson Davis at the time, running to him and one other person running Northeast Columbia, right? And I'm afraid I'm going to miss somebody, but there's so many of them, Charlie, that just stepped up and said, let me go lead from the front. Yeah. So
that's really cool to see so many people step up. There's so many stories. Okay, but the global pandemic, supply chain woes, and furloughs were not the only major challenge that you encountered in 2020, were they?
No.
What happened to you around Father's Day of that year?
Yeah, so Father's Day 2020, we planned a beach trip. Called my son and his girlfriend. We're going to come up. They were at the time living in Tallahassee, and my daughter, whose husband is a captain in the Marine Corps and is a pilot. They live in Richlands he's Cherry Point, somewhere over there in New River, I think, is where his base is. They're at Camp Lejeune. And so we went to Emerald Isle. We had a house. And, the second day on the beach, I think it was the second day, because that afternoon I got over. It was the first full day on the beach. We were playing tag. Our granddaughter, Adara, was there. She's, at this time, I think 7, and she wanted to play tag. So we were playing tag out on the beach. And, there's a difference between the beach sand that I grew up with at the world's most beautiful beaches down on the Panhandle of Florida, where, the sand's nice and cushy, and this concrete that they call sand over here on the North Carolina beaches. North Carolina beaches are beautiful. But anyway, I tagged my son-in-law, took off running top speed, stepped in a hole, broke my arch, fell, and broke my collarbone at the same time. I basically broke half my body. We lived in a third-floor apartment because we moved into an apartment. I moved into an apartment here, or we moved into an apartment here because we didn't know what part of town we're going to live in, right? And I'm on the third floor. COVID's out, so the hospitals, I don't know if I'm going to be able to have the surgeries. I feel like I am. I go, they schedule the surgery, both surgeries one day, which tough but easier in the long run, but tougher in the short term. And my wife couldn't come to the hospital. She can drop me off, but then she couldn't. She had to come back after the surgery the next day when I got, I stayed overnight. And she picked me up, and we drove back to my daughter's house because her house is on one level, because I wasn't going to be able to. It was a non-weight bearing injury. I couldn't make it up to the apartment. So, and then it just, I couldn't come to work because I couldn't get up and down the stairs because it's non-weight bearing injury. I think I went out twice to get to the doctor, and that was it. Other than that, I was in the apartment for 3 months.
That was killing you, wasn't it?
Oh, it was crushing me.
How tough was it to lead and work and manage while dealing with those injuries?
The hardest thing was not being able to go face-to-face with people, which, during the pandemic, it was kind of tough anyway. But there were still people that, I was still going to stores, putting my mask on, going out and going to stores. And really that was the toughest part. The toughest part was not being able to go and be with the team in that time when it was really tough and even though business was good, but the deliveries had already started to get, shaky, and I just wanted to be out there, with them, and I couldn't be. We had already created the Zoom and the Teams culture, so the meeting part of it, or that was really easy. I mean,
you just background, you might be in bed or something.
Exactly. Yeah, I was sitting in a chair in this room in a corner, where my wife would set me up with a table and the things that I needed, and then I'd just get in there and get in the chair and stay there until I had to use the bathroom. So.
How are your injuries now? How are you feeling now? 2 years later.
Well, the shoulder's great. The shoulder's fine. The shoulder was actually pretty good after about 2 weeks.
Okay.
The foot's not. The foot's never going to be right. Which the emergency room doctor told me that. He said this injury is not going to be easy. He said because I was complaining about this because I could feel it. Number one, it was disjointed. But he's like, the foot's going to be the problem, and he was right. It still swells up every day by the end of the day, and there's times when it's in pain. But I can come back to doing the things that I once did. I can jump. I can do my box jumps and my working out, and I can run on it.
So you're still doing box jumps on it?
Yeah. I'm doing that. I'm back doing that.
Well, that's great.
The biggest, toughest part I would tell you for that, Charlie, was I was in the best shape of my life at that time. I was doing 100 burpees a day.
I remember
I was
your
running
routines.
the steps.
Yeah.
I was 212, 215. I'm 238, 239 now.
You didn't have to get that personal in the pod.
Well, I was. But I was in great shape, and once you go through, and all the gyms, and then when I get over it, all the gyms are closed. So, it just took a while to get back into a routine.
Yeah.
But, it's all good.
All right. Jumping ahead to 2021. 1 year, our year to go forward together. It turned out to be a really special year, a record-setting year on many levels. What are some of your standout highlights and best memories from 2021?
Man, best memories, record months, record quarter, record year, record KPIs. We rolled out C4 completely.
What's C4? Tell them what C4 is.
C4 sales process. So when what
are the 4 C's?
It is connect, customize, commit, continue.
Yeah.
And I don't mean this any way other than it is what it is. When I got here, we had the 4 words. We had that, and that's what we had.
Yeah, you said, where's your sales process?
Yeah,
what are you talking about, Stacey?
I said, okay, is the sales process in the Broad River Way? Yeah, it's in there. And I go, and it's this one page. And I'm like, okay, gotcha. And don't get me wrong, the company was wildly successful, but I think it was mainly at that point in time a best practices company. We have somebody doing something successful over here. We all tried to do it, but you're not ever going to get everybody to do it, right? So I went and took the time and wrote out and detailed out a sales process because I believe that's super important. And then we got it taught out over the year. We couldn't come in person, so we did it, regionally, and we did it quarterly, and made sure that each, like the Connect was 3 months, and we just got it all into to the organization. So I thought that was a success, a big success. I would also say, things like building out a sales management program and investing in sales managers. 92, if you count if we're going to count the coastal, it's $98 million memory makers, 33 experts.
Yeah.
I mean, all-time highs. Business was wonderful, and we were able to learn, grow, and improve during that time. So
I think we grew on delivered sales 34% in 21 versus 20, and I think 20% or more in written sales.
Yeah.
So it was phenomenal. And then to cap it all off, you were recognized as our Executive of the Year at the January 2022 gala to celebrate the achievements of 2021. What did it mean to you to be recognized with that award?
It was humbling. I was honored, happy, excited, super happy, super excited. And really what it made me do was kind of reflect, and because no one person wins an award by themselves, and really it comes down to this amazing team that I get to honor to work with every day. I tell you all the time, I've got 400 brains and 400 hearts, and with Broad River now, we got 900, right?
Yeah. Like almost 1,000 heartbeats.
We got 900 heartbeats and 900 sets of hands and ears and eyes and all these things, and it makes us so powerful. But to know that the team responded to the things that we were trying to do to help them be better, right? And then, I believe that, this, I believe that people want to do a great job. I think everyone wants to do it. Like, nobody gets up and says, I think I'm going to go down there and screw up today, right? Yeah. And so ultimately, knowing that clicked and that resonated with people, would just really gave me an overwhelming sense of pride and happiness and joy. And then you think about the cross-functional things like Heather and her team. They're so central to what we do with like C4, Emmeline, Ariel. I mean, we couldn't have ever got all that done without that team really jumping in and being bought in and being excited about it with our memory makers. And then, it takes a village, and that. It takes every person on our team.
But I know it felt good to be recognized and
it did.
As the Executive of the Year, and you earned it, and it was well-deserving. And so when you think about leadership versus management, because you were able to get some tremendous results, through your leaders and through your team and through those 400 heartbeats and pair of hands, what do you think is the difference between management and leadership, or is there a difference?
Yeah, I want to come back to that. The one thing that I would tell you about the Executive of the Year thing too. So I'm sorry, but the first thing I wanted to do, and is I wanted to call my dad.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He wasn't there
Yeah.
For me to call, but I wanted to.
He would have been super proud of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And my mother was too, and I called her, so that was great. But I wanted to share that with him because he's had such an impact on my life, and you want to share your greatest joys with the people around you that mean the most, right?
When did your dad pass away?
In September 26th of 2019.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know he would have been super proud.
Yeah.
He would not have been surprised.
Yeah. No, I don't think so, but that's okay. He always thought he was always the biggest fan, right? Him and my mom both.
That's awesome.
And my wife.
Well, I love the shout out to your dad.
Back to the question.
Yeah. So when you think about the difference between management and leadership,
well, you manage things, you lead people, right? It's pretty simple. It's, ultimately, I can say I can move this from here to here, but there's a person that has to move it from there to there, and if you don't get that part right, you can't get the rest right.
Right.
So leadership is really it's love and math, man. That's what it is. It's love and math.
Love and math. We're going to talk a little bit about that today.
Yeah.
When you started with us, our executive team was going through book club, and one of our favorite books, as you know, is Everybody Matters by Bob Chapman and Raj Sisodia, which we highly recommend. And it's a great book on business and how to lead people. And they talk about human-centric leadership and being truly human leadership in that book. What does human-centric leadership mean to you?
It's the fact that people are your business. They're not your tool to go get what you want. They're your responsibility to go help them get what they want. It really comes down to, you don't have a company without the people.
Yeah.
It's the heartbeats. It's the minds. There's so much power in our people. As a matter of fact, they've got so much to give, and they're so smart, and they're so willing to want to help. The things that resonated with me the most in that book was that, when they talk about 88% of people going home, dissatisfied with their work, and that it's causing divorce, and that it's causing abuse, and it's causing all of these things, suicide, just all kind of crazy stuff, right? And then the fact that if we will just slow down enough to connect, right, and to say you truly matter, but not just say it, show it by asking for their feedback, asking them to help you solve the problem. Who's going to help you solve the problem the best? The person doing the job, not the person sitting up here in the Crystal Cathedral, right? So that's just the way that thing works. And I think that, the crazy thing is, you talk about that. We had just read the chapter about Bob, when Barry Waymiller, or however you pronounce that they had just hit the recession, and that all these people were saying, lay people off, get rid of people, cut, just you got to go right size, you got to go lay people off. And he was on this flight from Europe back to the States, and he said, it hit him while he was on the way back. He's like, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to be like every other company. We're not going to see these people as just pawns in our court. And they went back, and I think they asked for voluntary early retirement for those who wanted to, and made it financially, good for them to do it. They asked for voluntary furloughs, and then basically anybody who wanted to work got to work. And they told the story about the one lady who said, you know what, I would love to work, but me and my husband are doing okay. I know that you've asked Johnny, and Johnny needs to work.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of informed our reaction to the pandemic in a major way. And it shaped it. I think you would tell us that.
Yeah, I think at that time everyone was saying, "Hey, use this as an opportunity to don't waste a crisis to cut." And they were saying use the old Jack Welch mantra of cut the bottom 10%. And we're like, wait a second, no, we're not going to throw someone out during a global pandemic and go try to. I mean, we just recoiled at that sentiment.
Exactly.
No, we're going to keep our people. The company will suffer whatever the damage is, and we're going to bring all of our people home. We're just going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's not the mindset that everyone had. But it's great to have role models like Bob Chapman and Barry Wade-Miller to emulate and to teach us, and just as long as we're open and to connect to that type of leadership and bring it to our industry.
Yeah.
And to bring people in there who want to lead that way too, because you have to be connected. You have to have the right leadership who you're kind of being yoked with and connected with. But when you think about top performers, and we're always looking to develop and or hire top performers, producers, what do you think makes someone a top performer in sales in our industry?
Goodness. Yeah. I think number one, no better people to go to than Frank and Leah, right? And our first $2 million memory makers, and listen to their podcast that they did, and both of them said the same thing, and I think it's one of the biggest things. And I think Leah said work mode. This is a job, so you're going to have free time. As a matter of fact, you probably out of an 8-hour day, you spend 3 hours with a guest, except for on the weekends. And so what you do in those other 5 hours is going to really determine how you're going to be successful. Set goals. I think they need to set goals. And I think most of our top performers do have goals. You talk to Jamar, you talk to Lee, all of them have goals, right? And then the other thing would be is I think that I don't think that they project their feelings in a moment onto their guest. One of the biggest mistakes that commission salespeople make is that they hear the words "just looking" and they take it as an absolute, right? Or they think that guest isn't going to want to buy. Well, they pretty strong signal. They came to your store, got out of their parking lot, pulled in your parking lot, got out of their car, and walked in. So they're in the market for something.
That's right.
And I think they get their own personal feelings in the back, and they're able to go do that. And then the other thing is, I think I know that they allow the people to make the decisions themselves. So in other words, I put you in the position to make the decision, but I didn't assume that you would or wouldn't. And I didn't assume that you would or wouldn't buy a mattress or Diamond Care or whatever it is. I'm going to present the merits of everything to you, and I'm going to ask you to go ahead and do it because I know that's what you're out here to try to do. And I think that's what top performers do that others don't. And then the last one is they work hard. They just work hard.
So we're always looking for great talent to run our stores too. What do you think makes someone a top performing general manager or store leader?
Alignment.
With the company, with you?
With the company.
Okay.
It's with the company. Alignment is trust and ownership. I mean, when I trust you and I'm willing to take ownership of not only the things that I do that are good or bad, but also the things that I don't do that impact me adversely, right? That's ownership. And because if you don't take ownership, you're not going to take responsibility, so you won't take action. And if you don't trust, you're likely not to do that, right? And so ultimately, I think the first thing I look for is someone who can become aligned, someone who's open, someone who wants to learn. Like, you can't. You got to be aware when you're dealing with someone who feels like they've already arrived and they already know everything, right?
That's great. Hey, Stacey, this conversation is going so well. I'd love to bring you back next week. Let's do a part 2.
Okay.
All right. So we're gonna stop right there, guys. This is part 1. So much goodness from Coach McCormick, head coach. And so we're going to bring them back again we're going to make this one a two-parter. And so hang on to your hats. Hey, thanks for joining us at Stories from the River. We drop fresh new content every Wednesday, wherever you're listening. Could be on YouTube if you're watching us, or if you're listening on Apple, Amazon, Google, or Spotify, or wherever you get your fresh new content. Please mash that subscribe button or that like button. That's how we get more viewers, and we'll bring you as good of content as we can from the river here. So Stacey, we'll take a break right now and bring you back for part 2. Thanks so much.